I'm not going to just tell you that just so you can have the comfort of like someone else telling you it's a good idea if I don't truly believe it is.
They don't know what they don't know. So they don't know what they want necessarily sometimes. That's why they're in the program.
You tell your family members you're going to like buy a franchise, they'll probably laugh at you or tell you that's too risky.
Welcome to the Franchise Empire Show. They say Rome wasn't built in a day, and building your empire doesn't happen overnight. My name is Tarek Johnson, and owning franchises is what helped me go from employee to employer and start building my empire for my family. So this podcast is for you, the empire builders. For those of you who want to build something that stands the test of time. This is for those of you who are crazy enough to believe that you can make the dream in your head come to life. This podcast is all about bringing you real people who are building real empires so you can get inside their mind and heart and get proven strategies and actionable insights that will catapult you to build, grow, and scale your empire. How do you find the right franchise to buy? Well, I've personally spoken to hundreds of prospective franchise buyers, and I hear the same thing. Buying a franchise is overwhelming and confusing. There's so many options. I'm just Googling what's the best XYZ franchise, or Googling what franchises make the most money, or there's so many different options out there. And the reality is that building your profitable franchise empire starts with buying the right franchise first. If you buy the wrong franchise, it messes everything up down the line and will make it very difficult. So today I got to sit down with Kevin and Charista with the Thoughtful Franchise Brokers. They are the top performing franchise brokers in the Franchise Broker Association and have helped hundreds of clients. They also so happen to be a part of the franchise brokerage team that works with our 0 to Profitable Franchise System clients internally. So I work with Kevin and Charista every day. And over the last year, I've worked really closely with them and have really learned a ton from them. They're really in the trenches understanding the specific franchise opportunities that are out there. And again, they've also helped a lot of our clients avoid picking the wrong franchise and helped find them the perfect franchise. So in this episode, we dive deep into the dreaded mistakes that franchise buyers make. We dive into how to find the right franchise that aligns with your personality and your skill sets. We also talk about franchise resales, and the important things that you need to do and know to reduce your risk when buying a franchise. So again, I work with these guys every day, so it was really cool to sit and just talk shop with these guys and be able to provide value and help you. Now, if you want to see what franchises or resales are available and for sale in your specific area that could be a good fit for you, then you can go to franchiseempire.com/check territory. And Kevin and Charista will be able to scope things out for you, see what's available, and then you can set up a no obligation or cost meeting with them. And with that said, sit back, relax, and enjoy the episode. Welcome to another episode of the Franchise Empire Show. We've got some special guests. We got Kevin and Charista. Thanks for coming on, guys.
Yeah.
Yeah, thanks.
So, I'm pumped, and you guys have been our secret weapon for the last year behind the scenes. So I'm excited to kind of have this conversation publicly. And but for those people that don't know, because you got franchise broker, franchise consultant, people here, franchise coach. So what do you guys call yourselves, and for those people that don't know what the role of a franchise broker is, what is it?
Yeah, Christy, you want me to take the lead on that one?
Go for it.
Yeah, so I think all those words, are a little bit interchangeable in my opinion. But I guess technically we call ourselves franchise brokers, but consultants, is very similar. So basically, the gist of what we're doing is helping people that want to get into business for themselves, one, understand if franchising is the right fit for them. And if the answer is yes there, then two, help them find and explore a number of different franchise opportunities that are a good fit for them and available in their market, and check a lot of the boxes they have. So helping them through the validation process and other things that we do in conjunction with you and your program, I think is a little bit what is different in terms of how we operate as a broker. I would say it's almost more of a coach than a broker when we really start to get into it. So yeah, I don't know. That's kind of a long answer to your question, but yeah, I think they're a little bit interchangeable, but we do things a little bit differently.
Yeah, I feel like the term franchise consultant is a little misleading in my opinion. Like I'm not a huge fan of that term because to me it's more of a brokerage relationship. It's like, hey, there's a transaction and then getting compensated for the transaction, like very similar to a real estate model, right? Like a real estate agent broker model. Hey, when we pair people in the transaction, then we're compensated and we get paid. So I feel like that's like a more clear definition, like in my opinion. So I guess cool that you
Yeah.
guys are part of the Franchise Broker Association, because or else you might call yourself consultant if you're with another network, right?
Yeah. Yeah, I think it's a good point you make because we are really brokering, a transaction, but it has to be a win-win-win. It has to be a win for our clients first and foremost, and then a win for the franchisor. We want to bring them the right type of candidate. So it's not going to be a win-win if they don't feel like we're bringing them good candidates. So that's the third. And then the third win is obviously we get paid if we do a good job and help them through that process and find the right opportunity. So I do, yeah, the more I guess I think about it, it is broker may be the appropriate term.
Yeah, for sure. So today I'm excited. We're going to talk about mistakes people make. We're going to talk about resales. We're going to talk about personality profiles and understanding like how to even select the right business according to your Zorakle. We'll talk more about Zorakle for people that don't know what that is. Kind of some of you guys' favorite types of franchises. Um, and really how to get the most out of the relationship and working with someone like yourself. um uh but first, like, well, just to clarify, Kevin and Krista are business partners, not spouses, as many people confuse, which is funny. How did you guys wind up like connecting and start working with each other?
Yeah, it was actually through Kevin's wife, Amanda. I would give her the credit of introducing us. I mean, I've known Amanda for 10 plus years. So I knew Kevin existed, but I didn't know him on like a personal level. And so, yeah, just a tiny bit of history. So I was working with Amanda to create, we essentially created like a franchise on accident, but it wasn't technically a franchise because we weren't collecting royalties, but we were helping other women to start businesses, an advertising business. And we were supporting them and helping them through that process. And Kevin's background was working for a franchisor. And so that was kind of how we got introduced to this role of what a franchise broker is through Kevin had that, he was working with franchise brokers. And so he was starting to look into it. And Amanda was like, you guys would work really well together because you complement each other's, you know, like, we're kind of opposites in certain areas. We can kind of talk about that with the Zorakle, but Kevin and I are both opposites on like one of the spectrums, which is a big one. And so she felt like we would work really well together. So really it's because of her. That's kind of why we're even working together.
Yeah.
So thanks, Amanda.
You probably regret it, right, Krista?
Oh, okay. I mean, there's there's days that are harder than others, but no, we get along really well. We work really well together. I feel like we've gotten into a good groove, after a few years, and so yeah, we work well together.
Nice. Yeah. And it's cool because, I really call you guys business partners now. I mean, we become really close over the last year or so. And we got connected with some of the folks through the Franchise Broker Association. And before, in our zero to profitable franchise system in which we work with clients, a lot of it was based on people just kind of finding franchises on their own. So they'd come into our system, they'd get the calls with me, and some of them would get to work with me one on one. And I was doing some of the brokering, but I don't particularly enjoy that aspect of the business. It's like not the part that I really want to do. And so, you know, us getting connected has been just such a win-win-win all around, and making sure that our clients get the support that they need in the process, because what I found, and this is like the perfect segue into the first topic, which is mistakes people made, is that I was finding when I first designed the program, I meant for it to be more of like self-service. That was the intention, right? For people to use the program, use the modules, the group coaching calls with me, our private Facebook group, and kind of be able to go and find franchises on their own. What I realized is that people were getting stuck, like without that one-on-one guidance. Like people were still getting stuck and overwhelmed with all of the options that are out there. And then some of the brands that they would pick was like, why in the world are you looking at? That's a terrible idea. So what are some of the, top like 2 or 3 mistakes, and we could just kind of go round robin, like what are some of the mistakes that you see of people making when looking at franchises? Because oftentimes they've dabbled or they've looked as they enter the process and working with you guys. So what do you see from your perspective? My intention with this podcast is to help you build your empire. If you've gotten a single piece of value, one of the best ways you can help me and the podcast is to simply press the like button on YouTube. Lastly, share this podcast. Share it with someone who you know who is an empire builder. Imagine the impact you can have by helping them learn something that can build their business and empire. People will associate the value they got from this information from you, the person that shared it with them, all because you shared it with them. I appreciate you and your support. Let's get back to the episode.
Yeah, I would say I think I hear it a lot where people are like, I don't have a, we'll go through a list of categories, different types of franchises, and I hear them say like, well, I don't have experience in this industry. And they really, sometimes people think they really need to have a ton of experience in a specific type of business to be successful. And I don't really necessarily think that's the case. I think you should go into it with an open mind, and it's more based on, your skill set, your motivators, your income goals, how much you're willing and capable of investing, what would be a good market fit. Because the beauty of a franchise system is you can buy into a model if it's good, that's going to help you with the marketing and the sales, and it's going to give you a playbook and a systems and going to train you on everything you need to learn about that industry. So it's more like, let's just not worry about if you have a ton of experience. Let's focus on all the other stuff, like your long-term goals and your skill set, because if you believe in yourself and you work hard and you get in the right system, you'll be successful. So that's kind of the one thing, is like people worry too much about, do I have experience in a particular industry, or am I quote unquote passionate about it? And we'll tend to push back a little bit and challenge people on that part of it, just to kind of keep an open mind when they're initially exploring opportunities.
Yeah, for sure.
I would say,
Go ahead.
I would say another one is being like a customer of a franchise, usually brick and mortar. Like they go in, they love their experience, and they think, I want to own this business because I love being a customer. So I would love being a business owner of this franchise. And usually it's like a food franchise, a gym, beauty, something like that. But then when we actually look into the details of that franchise, it doesn't check the boxes of what they are looking for in being a business owner. So, a lot of times they're not even financially qualified for that franchise. So they can't, just from straight financials. Other times it's, just they don't really want to work nights and weekends. And if it's a food franchise, you're open, a lot of hours. So it's just different things like that. And even like if we get into the Zorakle assessment, sometimes what we see in their Zorakle assessment doesn't align with the skills that would be necessary for that type of a business. And so it could be, yes, maybe they could do it, but it might be draining for them because it's not like where they're going to be the best fit, based on their, personality and their skills, interests, things like that. So I would say that's another mistake people make, is getting really excited about 1 or 2 franchises. Maybe they're really popular, and then they realize after looking into it, oh, this doesn't actually like meet my goals.
That's such a huge one. I see it all the time. And I think I made a couple of YouTube videos on this in the past, like mistakes people make. And I feel like that's like mistake number 1, right? Is that's how so many people get exposed to franchising, right? Is they have an experience as a customer, and they're all excited and happy. They're like, we could own one of these. That would be so amazing. And they get so locked in on the vehicle as opposed to the destination, right? Which is, I guess a way that you could do it. But like the analogy that I use in that scenario is like, you're trying to get someplace. You're trying to get to a specific destination, either supplement your income, replace your income, just become an entrepreneur, whatever it is. And so, as opposed to just being like, hey, I want to take this vehicle, they're like, hey, what vehicle gives me the highest likelihood and probability to actually get to the destination, as opposed to getting super excited about something, which is kind of the way that we had went about it when Bridget and I bought ours. I didn't know what I know now. Um, you know, yeah, in the food business, so many hours, like crazy. You mentioned Krista, like the Zoracles, like, so, and I want to keep hitting on mistakes, but like, what role does the Zoracle play in potentially choosing the wrong business, or one that you were mentioning like drains you?
For anyone that's not familiar, the Zoracle is an assessment that you can take to help you understand like how you're wired. It's going to feel similar to a personality assessment, but it was developed for the franchise industry in specific. So a lot of franchisors will actually have their franchisees take this assessment, and that's how they're able to see like, oh wow, every single one of our top 10% of our owners have the exact same profile. So sometimes it's really important for certain systems to have a very particular profile. Other times the franchisor, the franchisees may take it and it might not be like super specific of like you have to be this type of a profile, and maybe a mix could be a good fit, but maybe there's elements. So that's what we're looking at is one is like a work style, because that's just how you're naturally wired of, are you someone who is fast paced? Do you like to make decisions? Do you like doing sales? Do you like being in front of people? Do you like networking? Are you going to be a good manager? Are you really analytical? So all of those things are, something that we're going to look at to make sure that whatever the skills are going to be needed for that franchise to operate it, that you have those skills just innate in you. And obviously people can learn how to do different things. And a lot of times like you can be a chameleon and you can do other things that you need to do the business. Cause as we all know, as business owners, you do have to do a lot. You have to do things that maybe you're not great at, but it's still things that are important for the business. But then it helps us to understand like what would be like absolutely draining for you, that would be really hard for you to be successful at, or where are the franchises that align better with your profile. And it's not like the end all be all. We're not going to say, oh, you scored this, so we only can look at these franchises. It's a conversation. And so we're going to talk with you to make sure that it is accurate, because every once in a while people be like, well, I feel like, I am comfortable doing sales, even though the assessment might not tell us that. So, yeah, I don't know if you have anything else to add, Kevin.
I think that's a good summary. Yeah.
So yeah, Zoracles are, I feel like those are interesting. Disc profiles, all super interesting. What's interesting is the similarities we all have. Kevin, actually, Chris and I were pulling ours up while we were waiting for you earlier. And what's interesting is that we're actually, because Krista said, I think that she said that her and I were more similar than you and I were. Or
No,
not, because
I
she
don't
said
think
you have
so.
like no thinker.
Yeah, I don't. I'm all driver.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So Carissa's and I are pretty similar then.
Oh, okay. I thought you were high driver as
I
well,
am, I am, but I have like next in line is thinker.
Okay, gotcha. Yeah, that's why one of the reasons why Krista and I work well together is because she's a high thinker and I'm all driver. So, I mean, if I was the only one in the business, then it'd be like, driving the car off a cliff every day, going too fast. So, she slows us down and makes sure we're making wise decisions. And it's just a good perspective because, like, I might not catch something that she is for like when we're working with a client, and so it really helps. But that's interesting. Yeah, I figured you were a pretty high thinker, but director would be first for you as well.
Yeah, for sure. So what, like, what are the ideal profiles then for business owners? And is there a profile that someone should look out for where maybe they're not, maybe being an entrepreneur is not like the best route for them?
Yeah, it's an interesting question. I mean, I'm biased because I do feel like high drivers tend to build a business quickly and are going to really make decisions and step into a system and drive growth in a business. But I don't necessarily think, you know, that they're the most successful or the only successful profile out of all of them. I think, you just have to make sure you're understanding yourself and being real with yourself. When you're working with us, like, in answering the questions in an open and honest way, because, like, what we don't want to do is show you a business that's built for a driver when you're really not a driver. That's a really critical thing, so we really try to ask a lot of questions and make sure that, like, we're not just focusing on the Zoracle. It's like the questions are confirming the Zoracle results as well. Um, but I think, we've seen, like, really successful business owners that have high thinkers. It just kind of depends on what would be a good fit for them. I don't know, Krista, would you agree or disagree with that?
Yeah, I would agree. I mean, there's most likely going to be a franchise for every personality type. There is a page at the end of the Zoracle that people actually don't get access to that we get access to, and it tells us their risk tolerance. So if they have a small comfort zone, that means they are going to be able to make a decision quickly, even if they are a thinker. But they're okay with risk. If they have an extra large comfort zone, it's going to be someone that has to be like almost everything is going to have to align perfectly for that person to feel comfortable making that decision because they're just really risk adverse. They don't want to lose their money. They're just nervous. They're more scared about it. And so like an extra large comfort zone, that type of a person coupled with most of the time they're like a belonger or a societal, there's other aspects of their profile that go into figuring out what would be a good fit for that person in particular, because that person would need a totally different franchise than like a Kevin, because like he cares about money and like, growing a successful large business, where we have other candidates that are like, I just want to do something I'm super passionate about, I enjoy doing, I can feel good about myself, and I don't need to make, $1 million. I just want to replace my salary, which might be like 75,000. And like that's important to them, of finding a business that feels comfortable, where they're making a difference. And so that's one of the reasons we use as Oracle, is because those are very two different people. And then we've got everyone all inside in the mix there. So it just, yeah, it's a really powerful tool. And we can add a link, in this podcast too, if people want to take the assessment and see kind of where they fall.
Yeah, for sure. We will definitely do that. So let's see. You guys can go to franchiseempire.com/Zoracle, and that will exist by the time this goes live. See how we just did that on the fly? And it goes to having a great team, right? In business, it's so key because even whatever you aren't in your profile, like you guys have done, you find what balances the equation out, right? If someone's all go, okay, then you want the other person to have a little bit more breaks. And I actually feel like my on a disc profile, I'm like off the charts D. I think it's like 99 on D. But in the Zoracle, I'm like high director and then secondary thinker, which sometimes can be actually very difficult. It can be kind of torturous because it's like driving with your like flooring it and then like with the brake at the same time, so it can be yeah, it can be interesting. But I think it's just a matter of knowing know thyself, right? Know thyself. So there's times where I know that I will naturally want to drag out making a decision and overthink it. So I just have to force myself to do something and to decide on something. And I think, entrepreneurs, it's like the most important muscle to build is to be decisive, the ability to make a decision. And, I what I say is that, and I feel like how someone goes through the franchise buying process is kind of representative of what they'll be like as an entrepreneur. Do you guys feel like that and see that as well?
I, I totally agree. Yeah. I mean, I firmly believe you need to have a sense of urgency in being a business owner because in every every day that you have, and so yeah, we totally see people that act with a sense of urgency going through this process, and it's like, well, I signed up with you guys, I'm gonna go like head down until I find the right franchise, and then we have some people that will kind of take a path like this that takes a while and maybe circumstances will come up that delays things, but there's always going to be circumstances in your life. Like you've got to just put your head down and keep following the process and go. So yeah, I mean, I totally agree with what you're saying.
Yeah. And so what are the you guys are in the trenches every day looking, researching franchise opportunities, seeing what are some of the, innovative concepts that are coming out, knowing which concepts validate well, meaning like which ones are the franchisees happy with. And, people will ask me and I'm like, honestly, I don't have my finger on the pulse and I always deflect to you guys and I'll either intro to you to them or kick you guys over to them, etc. So I guess what just overall trends are you seeing right now, in the franchise space from like more of like a macro perspective, and then we can kind of dial it down from there.
It feels like there's a lot of brands that are wanting to grow really fast, and so they're hiring teams to help them with their sales. And so sometimes when they do that, they're growing like super fast, like almost too fast, where then we start to get concerned about, are they going to have the support in order to help all of this exponential growth? And so that is one thing I'm seeing, and something that I, as a franchise broker, am going to be more cautious about those types of franchises. And not to say that it's necessarily even a bad thing. It could be a fine thing. It could be something you want to get in on because it could be great in the future. But since those franchises aren't necessarily as proven, it's just something that we would advise our candidate that you do more due diligence, and that you would need to have the type of a profile that is more willing to have risk. And so I would say that's something that we're seeing, is like some franchises that are newer into this space that are growing really rapidly. And so, that's always a concern for mine, to just have a little bit more due diligence when you're looking into those brands. And then, we've got resales that are always in the mix. And so like, that's something that some brokers don't really even like dive into. And being honest, like when Kevin and I started, we really didn't look at resales in the beginning either, because we just weren't familiar with the process, didn't know what to look for. And those are a little bit harder to find. And so that's something that we've been starting to do more, is look for something like that, because for a lot of our candidates, that could be a good fit. Sometimes it's not there. There's no resales in their territory, so we can't do anything about it. But that's definitely something that I'm seeing as something that we're making sure that we're adding into our approach, on our team. So
Nice. Yeah. What would you add to that, Kevin?
Yeah, on a macro level, there's some interesting trends. I would say I don't know if it's so much to do with franchises, but the type of people that are coming to us. There's kind of a fear of like you know downsizing or layoffs or whatever it may be, and like what am I going to do, and is this going to just be a continuing trend the rest of my career? So I've seen a lot of people, like honestly in kind of my age bracket, that are like, you know what, I need to start taking action so I can just at least have something set up for if that happens, or transition out of my job. So a lot of people are saying like, is there anything we can start while we keep our job and then transition into it when it's to the point where I can start to supplement my income? So we're really trying to find brands that are actually doable in that regard. Some franchises might say that's possible, but in reality, if it really is, that's a different story. So really trying to find opportunities where people can like gradually get into franchise ownership, sometimes, if the opportunity is right, the financials are right, it might just make sense just to jump right in, whether that's a resale or starting something from new that'll cash flow quickly. But you are seeing a lot of trends in terms of like people getting laid off, or commission structures getting cut from salespeople, and there's really nothing they can control about that, which feels a little scary.
Yeah, and just to clarify, ladies and gentlemen, when Kevin says his age bracket, he means the 40 plus crowd. I had to give him a hard time about that. Uh, yeah, it's I think it's super interesting how, like, from a cultural perspective now, like entrepreneurship has become the thing to do, which is interesting because I don't have a college degree. I dropped out of college after 2 semesters, and I remember many conversations with my dad being like, school is the priority, making money is second. And I just felt otherwise. And I felt like the investment licenses I got would be my insurance policy. But I knew that I wanted to be an entrepreneur. I knew that was my dream from day one. And I was going to, it's just a certain mindset, right? That, like, I I just knew I was gonna figure out a way to make it a reality and to become, like, quote unquote successful. However, you guys define success for yourselves. So, yeah, I think the push towards entrepreneurship is really interesting.
It's super fascinating because it almost went in like trends where you saw like our parents' generation, they would stay at a corporate, a corporation for 30 plus years. And then you started to see where like people are like 2 to 3 years in a job, and like, everyone's talking about like, these younger people are switching, hopping jobs all the time. And now I feel like it's going to like, they want to work for themselves and build something for themselves. So I feel like it has kind of gone in waves, which is interesting.
Yeah, it is super interesting. You guys hit on resales. What do you and I know that I guess this kind of started to happen a little bit as we started to work more and more together. And I talked a lot about resales, and all of a sudden all the clients are coming in. They're like, "What resales you got?" So it kind of is like drinking water out of a fire hydrant a little bit. But what do you see there? Because we've now had a bunch of clients who have bought resales. We have a bunch of clients that you guys are working with right now who are getting ready to close on great quality, like highly profitable resales that will allow them to literally replace their income immediately, which is super exciting. So I guess, what are your thoughts on it? What are you seeing, as just like the overall like opportunity there? And just any like thoughts you want to share on it. Hey, I hope you're enjoying the podcast episode so far. One of the most consistent things that we hear from people that reach out to us is that buying a franchise feels really confusing. There's so many options out there. It's a scary decision. They don't know how to vet or do the due diligence or really narrow down on the right franchise for them. And then they really feel alone in the process. You might be the only one in your family who's ever pursued buying a franchise or being an entrepreneur. Or maybe you've tried to start a side hustle before, or other businesses like me. Like, before franchising, I was not able to crack the code on entrepreneurship. I'd like to invite you to reach out and work with us. We've helped many clients buy franchises, get them profitable, or buy resale businesses that are thriving. Talking about highly profitable resales, great value. We've allowed many of our clients to actually quit their job right away and replace their income immediately. So if you want to work with me and my team on finding or buying a franchise, doing due diligence, vetting it, or resale, then go ahead and go to tarjohnson.com/consulting, and we're happy to see if we can help. All right, enjoy the rest of the episode.
Yeah, I personally think it's a huge opportunity. I mean, we've learned a lot from you in terms of how to like look for, evaluate, and help people through the process of resales. And then I think your system and the support you provide as well, it really will help people because it is a totally different process. But I think for people that really want to go into something full time but need to replace their income sooner than later, it's a great fit. And there's sometimes like we really stress with our clients, if they really want to resell, we may find something like within 2 weeks. We may find something 6 months from now. We will continue to look for you, but like Krista said earlier, it's a little bit out of our control, but there are things we do. It's like we can reach out to franchises and have them advise us if like there's a potential owner that's thinking about selling. So there's different ways we're getting better at finding those resales for our clients, but it's an opportunity that if you step into the right business for you, I wouldn't necessarily just buy a resale just to buy a resale. In my opinion, it has to be a good fit in terms of your personality and skill set and everything. But man, like if they have a team in place and they have customers in place and they're profitable, it can be an awesome opportunity. So that was a long answer to
I
your
think it was a
question.
great answer. Krista, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, I wish that there was more resales available that we could offer people. But it is kind of is part of our process now. Like even if someone doesn't say they want a resale, we might even look for it anyway because like we were talking about earlier, like some mistakes that people make is they don't know what they don't know. So they don't know what they want necessarily sometimes. That's why they're in the program. That's why they're working with all of us because we're helping them to figure out what they and provide them clarity. So like they will figure out what they want through the process. And then we're here to help them find those franchises. And so, yeah, resales can be awesome. I mean, I think if you're getting into business ownership in general, like any type of business ownership, you should be thinking about your exit strategy when you're getting into it. And so, like, it makes sense that, there are these resales available because those were people that, 7, 5, 10, whatever years ago got into that business thinking, I'm going to build this up and then I'm going to sell it and then I'm going to retire or I'm going to do another business or whatever it is. And so like that should always be something in the back of your mind is like, what is your end goal with this business, with this franchise? And so like the like the fact that there are franchises that are having resales out there is a good sign in my opinion because someone has built up a business and done really well and like they got to their end goal. They're going to sell their business and hopefully make millions of dollars. It's not always millions, and so that's the other part too is like you have to figure out like what type of a resale is this? Is this something that's really expensive and I'm going to be making six figures my first year? It's rocking and rolling and it's really good, or am I buying a resale where maybe that person never should have got into that franchise and I'm going to have to kind of like redo everything and make this a successful franchise and business for myself. So there's all types of different resales, and depending on the type of person you are will depend on like what would be a good resale opportunity for you.
Yeah, for sure. And we had someone going through the system. I think he's still actively looking at this franchise, but he had sent an email to me or us or whatever saying, "Oh, this is it's really expensive." I think it was priced at like 800,000 or something around there. And I was like, "That's a great sign, right?" And this has to do with the lack of education, right, that franchise buyers have, and not understanding the perspective and the reframe around things, which is the more expensive a resale is, the better, because typically the business is going to sell for a multiple of its profit. So if the business is priced at 800K, like that probably means the business is netting somewhere between 2 and 300,000 in profits, which is a good thing. So yeah, I think it's attractive, and doing a turnaround opportunity that's priced lower, it's just that's a whole different beast. And there's pros and cons to both for sure. One of the things that I've started telling people now is that one of the best ways to put yourself in a position to buy a resale is to get in a brand that you like and then be ready, because oftentimes they'll sell before they ever become publicly available because a neighboring franchisee will buy them. This just happened to Bridget and I. We were looking at a resale that Kevin I had told you about with a specific brand, and out of nowhere, the neighboring franchisee came in. We got an email, "Hey, we're canceling our meeting together because we just accepted an offer from our neighboring franchisee." I was like, "Dang it," because we really, really liked it. I mean, Bridget was like over the moon excited about it, so it was like kind of a bummer. But get in there, get in the franchise you like, and then build a relationship with your neighboring franchisees, and then maybe you can you can sell to them. I'm curious, what do you see? So there's always that awkwardness of like there's that label you can't there's that phrase, you can't see the label when you're on the inside of the bottle. And so sometimes as brokers, consultants, coaches, guides, whatever, we know when someone's like, "Hey, I really like this franchise," and we're like, "This is a terrible idea," but we can't just crap on their dreams. And unless you're me and you just want to be hyper direct and be like, "I think that's a terrible idea. You shouldn't do it." I think you guys approach things in a much more diplomatic manner. Uh, so how do you have those conversations when you're working with someone, you're really trying to help them, you want to see them succeed, and they're so excited or fixed on this opportunity that you think is a terrible idea for them? How do you have that conversation?
Yeah, I always start up. I think it's great to be excited about an opportunity. Like that's why you're here. You're excited about business ownership. You found this opportunity, but you're also here because there's some uncertainty. You're not sure if it's the right opportunity. You also like potentially want to look at other opportunities in addition to that. So when we start through the process, they answer a bunch of questions. We start to build that criteria. I'll ask questions about the franchise, like, what makes you interested in it? What type of employees are you, and if those two things don't match up, that's like, people tend to usually like realize themselves. But also like we'll dive into the franchise disclosure document. The numbers don't lie. We'll look at the item 19, and if your income goal is X and the average performance is, Y down here, then that also doesn't line up. So ultimately it's our client's decision. Like, hey, we can show you all the information, we can give you our opinion if you ask us about it. I will be very direct with you about it. But I don't want to come in and just shit on your idea right away. So that's not my approach either. But I'm going to be very honest with you about it and encourage you to look at other opportunities. So, um, it is always exciting. I love when people are excited. When they're excited about something I know that's not a great business, then I get a little worried and I'm going to be very, upfront with them eventually. But there's a process that we'll go through to make sure that that type of business is checking the boxes and your income goals and things like that. And if it's not, you'll realize it yourself, or we'll tell you.
Yeah, for sure. And Krista, from your perspective, how do you, because you guys have different personality styles too, right? And so like, how does that play out?
Yeah, I mean, I would say, like, if they come in and saying, I'm really excited about XYZ franchise, I'll say, great. Before we dig into that one, let's just talk about like what your goals are, and let's go through all of our, our normal process of like, let's get clarity on like what your goals are. Let's figure out what you want to be doing, like what you want your day to day to look like. How many employees do you want to have? Let's look at your Zorakle assessment. So when we do all of that and just like take them through a normal process, like they don't have another brand in mind, then they're going to start to see like what is most important to them. And sometimes I will even tell them, like, that's fine for you to look into that franchise, like look into that, but please also look into these other ones that check a lot of the boxes that we just talked about. And then naturally, as they go through the process, sometimes they're going to see it for themselves, because I'm less direct than you guys. Like, I am direct too, but I also don't like want to just tell someone what to do, because I don't like to be told what to do. And so I want to be able to come to that conclusion myself. And so I just put information together, like to show them, like, this is what you told me that you wanted. Does this, which franchise meets these criteria that we talked about? And then another thing, like, I'm just a very like factual person, so I'm going to pull up the FDD and like go through it with them. So it kind of depends on like why we're saying this is, quote, a bad franchise. Like, what is it about the franchise that is bad? Like, is it just because of the financials? Like, the average gross revenue is like 200,000. Like, that's pretty easy to be like, okay, let's look at this text together. Like, the numbers don't lie. If there's something else about it that we feel is maybe not the best fit for them, then I'll just kind of talk through that with them. And so, I don't like to tell people what to do. I like to help them see it for themselves, and just providing the context for them to be able to do that.
Yeah, I think that's a great perspective. It's so hard to do sometimes, right? Because it's like, at least for me, sometimes like I want to help so much, like want to rescue people, and be like, nope, just don't do it. Like, let's not even waste the time. Just don't do it. You're wasting your time. What's funny is when people don't listen. What's funny is when it's like, hey, we paid you to come in and get your advice, but you know what? We're not going to take it. We're not going to listen to you. I appreciate it, but honestly, I mean, I guess I can't blame people in that, because I in some ways I'm like that as well, where if it's like, that's not what I wanted to hear, but and that's where it's like you may have to learn a hard lesson there. You may need to learn a hard
Yeah.
lesson, and like that's just the
Well,
reality.
I mean, awkward conversations where I've told people like I'm not an order taker. Like I'm not going to be an order taker. I'm going. You've hired me to give you like like a my expert opinion and help you through our process. And if you want me to just say like yes, like I've had people literally say like, well, I want you to just review this franchise with me and tell me I should do it. I'm not going to do that like ever. If it's a good opportunity and I feel like it's a good fit for you, I'll 100%. Even if I haven't shown it to you, I'll say, yeah, you should do it. That's a great opportunity, or continue and look at another option that's similar. But like I've literally had people say that to me many times. I'm like, I'm not going to just tell you that just so you can have the comfort of like someone else telling you it's a good idea, if I don't truly believe it is.
Yeah, I know it's yeah, I'm the same. Yeah, I'm the same way. Like I will tell you that I think it's a dumb idea. It's still yeah, it fascinates me how many times people will still move forward with it. I just think it's crazy. You guys have I, I'm curious to unpack like the difference between, because you guys have your own business where you'll still work with people in a just kind of traditional brokerage process, right? And even some folks that come through our world, they don't want to go through the system, and they just want to operate under the normal process. What do you see, I guess, is the difference between folks who are going through the zero to profitable franchise system, having access to our resources and the modules and the group calls and the community? What do you feel like is the difference between folks that are just going through it through the traditional brokerage process without those additional resources?
Well, so I'm a person that loves education. I love learning. I love having like extra people to bounce ideas off of. So I would always choose the path of like all of that. So I would be a person that like I would want to have all of that support, all of the other people that are going through the process, because there's so much information that you learn from other people. And so if you don't have that access, like it's just not there. So it's hard for me to like recommend not having all of the support, because it doesn't like hurt anything. It only improves the whole process. However, I guess like there could be some people that, maybe they've owned a bunch of businesses before. Maybe they've been looking at franchising for a super long time. They've already gone through this process multiple times, and they like really just need help accessing inventory, essentially. Like they don't know the different franchises out there. They already know what they want. Like they're very decisive, and they're just like, I just need to help be connected to these franchisors, and this is what I want. Like I guess if they're super super specific, they've kind of already made that decision, maybe that would be a good fit for them, because they're going to just make a decision like in a month and they're going to be ready to go. So I guess there are people that maybe that could be a good fit for. I would say the vast majority of people, though, are going to get a lot of value from the entire system. So that would be my answer.
Kevin?
Yeah, no, I agree. I mean, um, typically we see people that come through and are part of the system and the community are more committed. They're like, they're serious about making a change in their lives and making that investment. And, they've made that commitment to us. And so now like, okay, it's getting real, and we're going to go through the process, and we're going to see all these other people in the community going through the same situation. So, I would say people are more committed. I just feel like it's empowering them with like a foundation of what the hell they're even buying when they buy a franchise before they like even start conversations with the franchise. So there's a lot of work we'll do, but like you're going to have way more confidence going through the ZTPF modules in the system and understanding the questions other people are answering before you even like we're even getting you started with validation, which is huge in my opinion, because you're kind of like Tark. You always say you're not getting into the forest before you hire the tour guide. You're kind of starting at the right point. So yeah, I mean, I love it. I do understand. Like I'm stubborn. I'm very fast and decisive, and maybe my personality type would just want to work with somebody like us and just say, hey, I want you guys to find really quality, profitable franchises and help me, through some of the due diligence. So I like working with those people as well. And I don't think it's like a one size fits all approach to buying a franchise, but certainly I think even those people would get a ton of value out of going through the system, if they would just not be stubborn like myself.
It's funny because sometimes the folks who move the quickest, and I've been like that too, where because I can move pretty fast. I can have the tendency with to move pretty quickly as well. And sometimes I see those people move quick, and then it's like, dude, you did this, you did this, you did this. Like you could have, like you missed some opportunities or whatever. Sometimes they go too fast, where it's like they're they're passing things. And what I think for a lot of those people, oftentimes they'll make it work. Like they've usually kind of proved themselves to be winners, but they may be leaving some things on the table, whether like mistakes or opportunities. But yeah, it's cool. It's it's interesting, and I've definitely come around on it, right? Like we've started to diversify things where folks who just want to get started with the process will have them just work with you guys, and maybe they'll join the program and system, later on overall. But it's so I think the secret weapon is really in the community for the people that use it. It's the community and the social proof and other people out there that are doing it and in it. I think in life, just nothing beats community and who you're surrounded by, right? And if you're surrounded by other people that are making big moves and being bold and courageous, like that's just it's going to rub off on you. And I think sometimes entrepreneurship and especially the franchise buying process can feel a little isolated at sometimes if you don't know anyone who's done it, because it still really hasn't become
Mhm.
popularized yet, right? Like franchises.
Yeah.
Yeah, you tell your family members you're gonna like buy a franchise, they'll probably laugh at you or tell you, that's too risky. And most people just aren't gonna ever own a business, so you have to surround yourself with people that are like-minded and are going to go through the same process as you. I'd say the other value of the system is access to you and the group calls and understanding like other opportunities people are exploring, the questions they're asking, how you're addressing them. I think that's very unique in our situation on how we work together, because like Krista and I are working with them pretty very closely, but then they can also have you as like a third party, and you might offer a totally different perspective, or even like crap on an idea that
That
we
shit
presented
sucks. No.
occasionally. And yeah, and that's cool. Like, I mean, I remember one client, they were really excited and we're going to move forward with a franchise, and they hadn't done the proper due diligence, and you like harped on them like you haven't made enough validation calls with owners. And then they ended up doing that, and they learned some things like it probably wasn't going to be a good fit for them, and they ended up not doing it. So I mean, that's one small example, but I think it's just good to have a number of different people kind of working with you through the process.
Yeah, for sure. And I think ultimately, like what's different with the system is that we're still gonna keep working with people. So it's like we want you to buy the right thing. And I think ultimately, one of the reasons why you know we we all work very closely together now. Like, I mean, every day we're communicating and talking, and you guys are on our leadership team. And like, so we're very intertwined now. And for me, I'm very picky about like who I surround myself, who I work with. And one of the things that I loved is like you guys' level of integrity, and that the fact that you care. And unfortunately, and I don't want to start poo-pooing on other people, but I think I've seen a lot of brokers and consultants in the space that I just can't say that about, where it's like they're truly just out there to just make as much money as possible. They really don't give they really don't care that much or have any sort of emotionally vested interest if it works out for someone. They're like, I did my job, I matched you up with a franchise, you bought it, and like, bye. And that's not the overall experience I think we've had. But can you just, I guess we can close on this, which is like, how how important is it? What is the difference between like good brokers and ones that you may go, huh, I may want to get a second opinion or look at kind of working with someone else? And like, what should someone be getting out of that relationship?
Yeah, I mean, when Kevin and I started our business, like the name of our business was Thoughtful Franchise Brokers because we wanted people to feel like we are treating them the way that we would like to be treated. So, like, we're very transparent and honest with our candidates. We're going to tell it like it is sometimes, even if that it's hard, information to hear. We're going to listen. Like, we truly care, and we want them to be in a good franchise because it would, like, that's my worst fear, honestly, as a franchise broker, is putting somebody, connecting them with a franchise that ultimately was a bad fit for them for whatever the reason was. And so we are very specific on like making sure we have a lot of conversations with these people to understand truly what would be a good fit for them so that we do make a good match. So like the first year in business, like the whole year, I was just like in education mode because I wanted to learn everything I could about all of these hundreds of thousands of franchises, and so because the more I learned, the more I knew what would be a good fit. And so that's another like benefit of us being in broker networks is we have access to other brokers. And so we can get the inside story of like, has anyone ever placed anyone in this franchise? Like if it's not a franchise where that's like maybe is newer to us, then we can hear from other franchise brokers their personal experience. So I would say like when you're looking for someone to work with as a franchise broker, you just want to feel like you trust them. Like you just have that like level of like, I feel like you really care about me and you care about the end goal. It's not someone who's going to spend 30 minutes on a call with you and then just start sending you brands. Like how would that person know what's a good fit for you if they haven't spent enough time with you or they didn't ask the right questions? I would also be leery of people who only have like a list of 20 franchises to show because they know that those franchisors are really good at sales and they're going to get people across the finish line. Where maybe those, for some of those franchises are fine, like they are good and they just have really strong salespeople. That's great. But you also want to make sure that your franchise broker is like looking at all of the inventory because there are other franchises that I haven't, diving into of like figuring out like the specifics about that one. And so when I have a candidate that wants something, maybe that's a little bit different than a different candidate that we've worked with in the past. I'm going to go back into my education mode and do research and talk to other brokers and figure out what would be potential, good franchises for that person. So I would say like that's a benefit of working with our team is like it's not just one person. There's several people who are working on the back end to find the right fit for that person and make sure that we are making a good match.
Boom. Anything to add to that, Kevin?
Um, yeah, I mean, I think I, for me personally, I feel like I've owned businesses before that were non-franchise. My wife owns a franchise now. I worked for a franchise system. I feel like I've finally found something that I really, really love and enjoy doing. Like I really, really like doing this, and I feel like I'm very good at it. And I think Chris and I's one of our superpowers is like finding the right franchise. Like even outside the bucket, we've had very specific requirements that people have tasked us with, and we're like, oh shit, I don't know if we're gonna be able to find something, but we end up finding like the perfect fit for them. So I think you know, we think outside the box, I would say quite a bit more, in my opinion, than other brokers, and really try to find other opportunities. But it's definitely like it's a huge investment for people. It's a big deal. Like we don't take it lightly, and we just want to make sure that people are successful. So, yeah, I agree with Chris. That first year when we were like, I was so nervous, and, and we were like anxious all the time because we just wanted people to be successful. But yeah, I would say just our backgrounds and just we are aligned in our values, Krista and I, and we want to make sure we're taking care of people. So I think that's why we've been successful.
Yeah, yeah, and it shows for sure. It shows. You can tell when people, I think, don't care. And yeah, there are a lot of brand kind of pushers out there, and I guess I have mixed feelings about that, because it's like, okay, if you feel like something specific is a great opportunity, then yeah, of course, I guess why wouldn't you like want to put it in front of as many people as possible? But I think that flexibility is important for folks that, and we meet multiple times a week and talk about what our clients are looking at. And so it's like, oh, interesting. We just had this, I think this conversation yesterday, like, oh, never heard of this brand, and that's kind of outside of the box. And it was like, yeah, this person had a very specific criteria, and this was kind of like the only one that matched. And I love to see that, because I love to see when it's like not just you know cookie cutter, and really trying to like find that right fit for the person, because there's so many brands out there. There's so many different brands, and I truly do feel like, I think Krista, you said this earlier, that there's something out there for everyone, whether you wind up doing it or not, whatever. But there is a franchise concept out there that would work great for you, and that would really be like the most ideal and like perfect match. It's just a matter of like really aligning and figuring it out. So cool. Well, thanks guys for coming on. I appreciate it. Hey, before we go, thank you so much for listening to this episode. Please subscribe here on YouTube if you haven't already. And the biggest thank you that you could ever give me is to share this episode with someone who you think will benefit. That means that we can share this message with more people and hopefully positively inspire them like we have you. So thank you. And until next time, go build your empire.